So a few days ago, I made a video talking about a potential detail that we might have found out about the next generation Nintendo system or the Nintendo Switch 2 from Nintendo themselves, and it happens to do with the buttons that are going to appear on the new controller for this new system. And so it seems like in a lot of recent upcoming Nintendo games, they're starting to use a different style of UI for the face buttons, being the A, B, X, and Y buttons, where they're really matching the color scheme for how these buttons were on the SNES system that came out in Japan, where of course they were using 4 different colors on the controller, where the A button was red, the B button was yellow, the Y button was green, and the X button was blue. And so of course a popular game from the SNES being Super Mario RPG is getting a full-blown remake on the Nintendo Switch, and we have already noticed that inside of this remake, for the UI, the colors are once again matching how they were on the SNES system. But then after this, we also got Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, which got a remake announced for the Nintendo Switch, and we actually got to see a little bit of the UI inside of this game, and we've noticed that they've actually changed some of the colors for the buttons inside of this game as well, where now the A button is red, the B button is yellow, and the Y button is green, similarly matching the colors of the SNES system. And this was very surprising because of course the original game on the GameCube had these buttons matching how they were on the GameCube controller, where on the GameCube controller, of course the A button is green, but they changed that to red now, so it was very kind of interesting why they decided to make this decision. And then we also had rumors that were circulating around that apparently from people who data mined through Super Mario Bros. Wonder, they found button assets that were unused inside of the code of the game, and these buttons also have colored buttons that appear for the A, B, X, and Y, but also for the D-pad. Now, some people were saying that the source for these colored buttons inside of Mario Wonder appears to be unconfirmed, as other people tried to data mine through the game and couldn't find them, so we're not exactly sure where these colored buttons came from. But today I want to talk to you guys about multiple other examples that have now been discovered and not even from Nintendo themselves. Now, just a few days ago, there was a brand new game that came out on the Nintendo Switch called Fashion Dreamer. And I don't really know too much about this game. It doesn't seem like a type of game that I would enjoy. Definitely seems like one that a lot of girls would like because it seems like you're making a lot of different fashion designs and cool clothing and stuff like that. But the thing that's interesting about this game that people have noticed is that if we actually take a look at the UI for this game and the buttons that you're using here, take a look at the ones on the bottom, you can see right here that the A button is red, the B button is yellow, the Y button is green, and the X button is blue, once again matching the colors that appear on the SNES. Now, another brand new Nintendo Switch game that's going to be coming out next year in 2024 is a new game inside of the Trails series called Trails into Daybreak. Now, I've actually been meaning to get into the Trails series myself. I've heard that they're really good games from a lot of people, but it also seems like this is one of those games where you really have to play through a lot of games to catch up to the most recent one, and it also seems like it's one of those games where if you start from the very beginning and play all the way up until the most recent game, the payoff is very rewarding, so you don't want to just start with the most recent one or jump into the middle of them, so it definitely seems like it would be one where I would need a lot of free time so that I can start from the very beginning and kind of sink in all the time to play through all of those games and get to the most recent one. But yeah, they definitely seem like they're pretty fun games, and so there's a brand new one that's coming out on the Nintendo Switch next year in 2024, and people have noticed that when they've actually showed us screenshots of what the game is gonna look like, you can see right here the A button is red, the B button is yellow, and the Y button is green. They don't show us the X button, but if I had to take a guess, I'm sure it's also gonna be blue. And this is very interesting because there's been a few Trails games that have come out on the Nintendo Switch, and even if we take a look at the most recent one, which came out just a few months ago, called Trails into Reverie, if we take a look at the UI for that game on the Nintendo Switch, we can see right here that the A, B, X, and Y buttons are all black, so they've pretty much been like that for a couple of Trails games, so why would they all of a sudden now decide to change them to having different colors now for the game that's releasing in 2024? Now, Nihon Falcom, the developers behind the Trails games, are also responsible for another RPG series that a lot of people really love called the Yeast series, and there was actually a brand new Yeast game that came out just a few months ago called Yeast 10, and this also came out for the Nintendo Switch and other systems, and there's actually been a few Yeast games that have come out for the Switch as well. I know a lot of people have told me to play Yeast 8 because apparently that's a really good game, so it's something that I've also had on the back of my mind. But the interesting thing that people have noticed is that for Yeast 10, which is the most latest one that came out just a few months ago, the game is once again using colored buttons for the UI on the Nintendo Switch, where we can see right here, the A button is red, the B button is yellow, and the Y button is green. And because there's been other Yeast games that have come out for the Nintendo Switch, if we take a look at the UI for Yeast 8 and Yeast 9, the UI is not using the colored buttons for the A, B, X, and Y. So once again, how come they decided to randomly just all of a sudden change it to having colored buttons for the latest Yeast game that came out this year? And so now we can see that even third-party games are starting to adapt these colored buttons for the A, B, X, and Y, and it's definitely getting pretty fishy because at first when you just saw it for Super Mario RPG, you could say that, well, of course it's an SNES game, so it's going to use the SNES color scheme, but then it got a little bit weird with Paper Mario for all of a sudden getting rid of the GameCube colored buttons to now having ones that match the SNES, and then apparently we got some stuff with like Mario Wonder, but that was a little bit unconfirmed, but you could just say that, well, maybe it's something that Nintendo is starting to do now with some of their first-party games. It could just be a Nintendo thing, maybe it's just a Mario thing. I mean, these are all Mario games, but now we have even third-party games that are starting to do this. And it's especially weird because there's been other Trails games and Yeast games that have come out on the Nintendo Switch, but none of them have ever used these colored buttons, so how come all of a sudden they randomly decided for the most latest ones that are coming out now for the Nintendo Switch to start using these SNES colored buttons? And really the thing that I find the most interesting is the consistency between all of these games, because you could make the argument that if in one game, if the A button was red, and if in another game, if it was blue, and if in another game, if it was green, you could just say that you're kind of reaching here and they're just using colored buttons for the different control schemes for the UI. But in every single one of these examples, like we've gone through like 5 different games now, and in every single one of them, the A button is red, the B button is yellow, the Y button is green, and the X button is blue. Like, what are the odds of these buttons being colored exactly the same through multiple games by sheer luck and pure coincidence? It just doesn't seem likely in my opinion. It definitely seems intentional, like they know something about the next system and they're doing this to future-proof. Now, if you want to learn more about exactly why these colored buttons would be such a good idea to have on the Nintendo Switch 2 and what it could mean for everything, I did make a video about that already, like I mentioned earlier, so you can click the little eye up in the corner right now if you want to go ahead and watch that video, but I'll also have it in the outro of this video if you want to go and watch it after you're done watching this one. But yeah, it just seems a little bit fishy to me now that even third-party games are starting to use these colored buttons, and it's not just like a first-party Nintendo game thing only, so yeah, it definitely seems to be a little bit more interesting now, and I guess we're just gonna have to see if more and more games start to come out now that are also starting to do this, because right now, to me, it definitely seems intentional, and I'm actually starting to lean towards like this being 80% real, that the Nintendo Switch 2 is really gonna have these colored buttons. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed the video, definitely be sure to click that like button and also subscribe to the channel, as well as I'm going to be having more videos talking about the Nintendo Switch 2 and Nintendo's next gen system as the information comes out. Comment down below and let me know what you guys think about this now. Are you starting to kind of jump onto this theory now too, that the Nintendo Switch 2 is probably going to have these colored buttons? Like, we're definitely starting to get multiple games here now, and it definitely seems a little bit hard to kind of think that this isn't intentional. So let me know what you guys think about all of this down below in the comments. But if you don't have anything to say about this, definitely just comment your favorite emoji down below for some engagement. I would really appreciate that. Go follow me on Twitter at Aero so you can be featured in videos. And also join my Discord server as well. We've got a bunch of people in there who are always talking about Pokemon and Smash Bros and Nintendo, so definitely be sure to join that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching.